Hi, welcome to the Larson Health Podcast, the show that explores the deep connection between our wellness, mindset, and how we live our best empowered lives. I'm your host, Kim Larson, founder of LarsonHealthWeightLoss.com. This episode of the Larson Health Podcast is proudly powered by Bold Brave TV. You can watch or listen on Spotify, YouTube at the Coach Kim Larson, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to tune into your favorite shows. Today, we're zeroing in on a crucial and often neglected pillar of overall health, financial health. Your relationship with money doesn't just impact your bank account. It affects your sleep, stress levels, diet, relationships, and even your immune system. That's why I'm honored to welcome Kelley C. Long, a CPA financial planner and money mindset coach who specializes in helping smart, responsible women break free from fear and shame around money. Her approach is judgment-free, empowering, and deeply rooted in helping clients understand the why behind their money decisions, not just the how. With over 2,500 individuals coached on everything from debt reduction to retirement clarity, Kelley brings both expert knowledge and compassionate guidance in today's conversation, and I can say that sincerely. And today we'll be digging into financial health no matter your age or income. Kelley, thank you so much for joining us today on the Larson Health Podcast.
Hi, Kim. So glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that lovely introduction.
It's wonderful to see you again. So, Kelley, before we dive into the three things everyone should know about their finances, what inspired your shift toward focusing on the emotional and mindset side of money?
Yeah, that's a great question. I started my career in the financial planning world working with wealthy families and people who had multi-millions available to them. And the thing I quickly learned was that people who have more money aren't necessarily, quote, better with money. They just have more room for error. And I had a couple experiences with folks who had more than enough money, but still were struggling with the making decisions or doing the thing that they knew was best for their money. And I realized that people like you and me, everyday people, didn't have access to the expert knowledge and guidance that most certified financial planners and CPAs like myself have, because they don't have enough money. And so I went about trying to find a business model that would pay my bills as well as help me help those people who are underserved. And it took a long time, but I did finally find it.
Yes. And I got to say, you're awesome because you used to be my financial planner and we'll love to have you back again. So
Thanks. I know you were one of my first clients.
Cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, back in the day.
Back in the day. So when you're working with women, who are already high functioning in their other areas, what are the core fears or thought patterns that keep them stuck financially?
There tends to be one of two kind of opposite attitudes that I encounter. And interestingly enough, I recently had somebody in my profession question whether a lot of people held these attitudes because they hadn't really encountered that in their work. And I said, well, that's because our profession doesn't tend to help people with these. And so I've worked to get myself to a place where I am, that trusted advisor that isn't going to shame you. So I either find that women have this whole, I'm terrible with money, and they have a lot of shame around it. And what I often find is the reality is they're not terrible with money at all. They just don't feel confident in their skills. And then I have the other side, which is there'll never be enough money, but I have no idea what to do with it. And so they're stockpiling cash. And in that case, there is a little bit more functional aspect of it, but it's providing a level of mindset shift away from that scarcity mindset that got them to being financially secure, probably. But now needing to actually enjoy their money. It's kind of, those two are kind of 50-50 what I see in my practice.
Okay, cool. So I'm curious about the people who are they have a lot of cash or hoarding a lot of cash. Is that just kind of they need to learn how to manage it?
It's a combination of overcoming the fear of releasing it into the investment world. There's a lot of misconceptions about investing, particularly people who grew up without a lot of money, myself included. I grew up in a just solidly middle-class family, so we had more than enough of what we needed, but my parents both had pension jobs, so there wasn't a focus on investing for the future, and it just wasn't something that was part of our vernacular. And a lot of people who grew up that way maybe had a different experience with somebody who was investing and they saw it as gambling. And so they feel like, if I invest, no, I'm intentionally being vague with that term. If I invest, I'm going to risk losing all my money. So there's a huge element of education there around how investing doesn't have to be, it can be a really risky thing to do with your money, but it doesn't have to be, and how there are different ways to approach it. So it's a combination of that fear of like, I don't want to lose everything. And then also just not knowing how much they can safely invest. And that actually is going to be one of the things we're going to talk about, that everybody needs to know about their money, because they just don't know what they can keep in cash.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So financial paralysis and health paralysis can look very similar, knowing what to do, but feeling unable to act, right? So how do you help people break that cycle?
Well, it's all about accountability, as you know. There are so many parallels between nutritious behaviors and money. I really try not to use judgmental words like good, bad, positive, negative, but the things that we know are supportive to our health.
Yes.
So in our world, all the information is at our fingertips of how to manage our money and our health, but yet most of us don't do it. And so some of it is giving people grace for like this, you don't have to do this thing. You can still be good with money and not do this thing. That's a big part of it. But then some of it is just acknowledging like, this is never going to be fun. People come to me and say, oh, I really need a budget. And my first question is, why do you think you need a budget? And because some people do, some people don't. So there is that sense like, if I don't have a budget, I'm bad with money. So we check in on that. But the people that do and need to have a little bit more diligence around where their money is going, the people who are trying to kind of get out of a tight spot, then the accountability is there, where I just say, we're going to use our time together to do the money stuff that you don't like to do. And I'm telling you, you're probably never going to like doing it. And that's okay. You don't have to like doing it. Like, I don't have to like all of the things. I don't like working out. I hate working out, but I love the results.
Yes.
So finding a way to work out that I can do consistently is more important than finding the perfect way to make my body like exactly the way it's going to be. Like finding those trade-offs. And that's what I work on with my clients with their money. It's like, you don't have to track every penny. It's okay to like have a wishy-washy relationship with your Costco bill, but let's make sure that it's happening consistently. And so the accountability is really and a lot of people struggle with that. Well, I should be able to do this on my own. Okay, maybe, but you're not.
Yeah, right.
But like, if this is something you can outsource, if it's really important to you, it's okay to outsource it.
Yes, exactly. So what does financial health really mean? And how does it differ from say, just budgeting or saving?
That's a great question. And there are lots of opinions on what like financial wellness means. And so there are two definitions that I tend to go to one is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is a federal agency that may or may not exist right now. It's kind of in limbo, but it was established 10, 15 years ago and has been a really helpful agency for consumers. They have their own definition. And then the company that I used to work for before I went out independent on my own, called Financial Finesse, they have a definition. And both of those, I agree with both of them. So it's somewhere in like the financial wellness is not financial literacy. Financial literacy is, I know how money works. It's like, I can read, but maybe I can't comprehend it, right? Yeah. Financial education, and then financial security is a state of being. It's like actually something you can achieve. Financial independence is a milestone, but financial wellness is an ongoing thing, just like our health, where you have minimal financial stress, you have little or no high interest rate debt, have cash in the bank, you're working towards your goals, and you feel generally comfortable making decisions in your life for every reason but money.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. That's a perfect answer for how people are challenged with all this, right?
Yeah. It's a state of being, and it's a moving goalpost.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a feeling.
Yes, exactly. So was there a defining moment in your career where you saw, the undeniable link between maybe emotional wellness and money decisions?
I can't think of one specific moment in terms of that, maybe around my own. I tell the story all the time of back when I lived in downtown Chicago. And this was a long time ago because we took cabs everywhere. Yes. And I was hanging out in River North, and I had heels on and a skirt. I was dressed for the office, and I had been out and had enjoyed 2 glasses of Oregon Pinot, my favorite wine. And they were about $15 a piece. So I'd spend $30 plus tax and tip on happy hour. And it came time to go home and it was dark and, and I walked like 10 blocks to get to the red line. I didn't want to pay in my heels after dark in Chicago instead of paying $15 to take a cab home. And I was like, that's weird. Like I had no problem consuming $15 twice, but I will go to great lengths to discomfort and to not spend that $15, like a convenience. And that was a huge light bulb moment for me. Like, why am I making these different decisions around the same quantity of money? It's not about the money, obviously. It's about some other like scarcity thing. And each of us has those things. So, a lot of people, when I tell that story, are like, you're crazy. I would always take the cab and not buy the wine. I'm like, well, that's you. Your mom taught you differently about being out after dark.
Yeah.
But that
Chicago
was a
back
big
then
one.
was a little different than today.
Yes, it was very safe. I never felt unsafe. It was more just like, what the heck was that? My feet were killing me. And I just never considered the luxury. So why did I consider getting a cab home a luxury, but not buying the best wine?
Yes.
And how can what was more important to me? Did I want to make the cab not a luxury, or did I need to temper my wine budget? Right.
Yeah,
and I decided that I could afford to take the cab. So I needed to find ways to fix that and question my automatic decisions. Another one is that I commonly see somebody's getting ready to take a trip. They look up the cheapest flight and that's the way they go. And I was having a conversation one time with a family member and they were taking the red eye. And I was like, why are you taking the red eye? Also, I don't want to take you to the airport in the middle of the night, but she said, well, it was, $50 cheaper. And I'm like, I would pay $50. I would pay more, so, and she kind of like, I hadn't thought of it that way. And so some of the automatic, and I used to be the person middle seat on Spirit Airlines because it was the cheapest flight when I probably could afford the aisle seat with no connection on a better airline.
Yes.
And I started but that is a lot of work to overcome those automatic habits because you feel like, oh my gosh, this is scary. I'm spending money on something that I quote shouldn't. And where did I learn that? So there's a lot of work behind updating that behavior. And it can be really scary because a lot of people hold on to those frugal habits unnecessarily because they're afraid that if they go the luxury route, it's going to be like a snowball effect and they're going to be poor.
Yeah.
They're never like, I get the taste and I'm never going to stop. It's the reason I never used to keep Cheetos in the house till I healed my relationship with food. Like I knew if I had one Cheeto, the whole bag was going down. Now I trust myself and they don't taste that good.
Yeah. And they don't taste as good anymore because they're not the same. So
there's not a restriction,
Yeah, exactly. So that's so true where you have this moment where you start trying stuff and you're like, oh, yeah, not as good as it used to be. So so that's interesting.
Yeah, we tend to actually, this is an interesting point I want to make. We tend to take the thing that we really want and put it on a pedestal. And then we never want to get there because we're afraid we're going to like it so much that we'll never be able to move on. So when I was much younger, all I wanted to do was live in a really nice loft apartment in downtown Cincinnati. That's where I lived at the time. And I finally overcame what I identified that I was actually afraid I was going to love it so much that I would never want to live anywhere but downtown. But I also someday wanted to live in the suburbs with a dog and a yard and da-da-da-da-da. So I was afraid that once I knew what it was like to live downtown, I would never enjoy all the other plans I had for myself. So the first night was super noisy, bright lights. It was a pain in the butt to go to the grocery store. And I was like, yes, like this is cool, but it's not the best thing ever. So we almost have to try the thing to take the magic away from it to a certain extent and then fully immerse ourselves in the magic, knowing that we can trust ourselves to keep moving in our life and not just get stuck on something.
I agree. Yeah, because it's amazing how so many of us get stuck on something like that where we keep thinking that, oh, this is gonna, I don't want to do that because I might, get stuck there.
Yeah, I'm afraid that I'm going to like it so much, or it's, or what if I hate it? That's another. So I don't.
Which
I need
in your
that
case, with all the lights and everything, it's like, no thanks.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, hey, stay with us. The Larson Health Podcast is brought to you by our sponsors and LarsonHealthWeightLoss.com, where healing begins with what you feed your body and your mind. Ready to reclaim your energy? Visit us online at LarsonHealthWeightLoss.com.
Super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair. What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to esense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth. Published by iUniverse, Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies in settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Hey, we are back with Kelley C. Long of Financial Bliss. And welcome back, everyone. And Kelley, hi. So, Kelley, what's one of the top 3 things everyone should know about their finances that no one really talks about?
I wouldn't say that no one talks about this, but there are a lot of misconceptions around credit situations, your credit report. So everyone needs to know what's on their credit report. And that is not your credit score. And I think that's one of the things I want to dig in on is like, what's the difference? So you can access a copy of your credit report on a website, annualcreditreport.com, at least once a year. It's a federally mandated law. Sometimes you can access it more often depending on what's happening in the world. But there are lots of other websites where you can pull a copy of your credit report. But that's the only place you can get a version from each of the 3 credit bureaus. So there's TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. And those are all businesses whose job it is to collect all your financial information and keep it in a database. And they all kind of collect different information, but a lot of them have the same information. So for example, every month I get a notification saying my credit score's moved up and down a little bit because I paid off a credit card, because I used my Capital One card to buy everything and then I paid off every month. And all 3 of those credit bureaus get that report from Capital One. But then, like if I were to default on rent, back in the day, my landlord might only report that to one of the credit bureaus. So that might only show up like on Experian, but not on Equifax or TransUnion. So it's important to check all 3 of those to make sure that all of the information is correct. When I one time went through this process, I had been through a divorce. And when my ex-husband had forwarded his mail, that new address had shown up as one of my addresses, which isn't a big deal, but it was coming up in like identity identifier things. And I had no idea what his address was. We were split up. I was done. So I had to take some steps to remove that from my report. Or it's interesting for me to see like all the different spellings of my name that come up.
Yes.
I have that extra E, and then long sometimes is Wong and Hong and Lawn and LOHG. Like, it's just amazing how people's sloppy handwriting can come through on my credit report. But annualcreditreport.com is the place to go. And I recommend, because there's 3 credit bureaus, every 4 months, go in and pull a different one. The website is so ugly. It looks super glitchy. It looks scammy. It's the federal government. They have not invested anything in this. And so it can seem like it's a trick, because you have to put your personal information in there to download your report. The other thing is your credit score then is basically your grade. So if your credit report is your homework, the credit score is your grade. And you can pay to get a copy of your credit score from there's Vantage and FICO are the 2 big credit scoring companies. But just like your high school literature teacher had like a sliding scale, but you never really knew what her formula was, they'll have kind of their own formulas for calculating your credit score. And so I tend to not put a lot of weight on those estimated scores that you can get from like creditsesame.com or on the Capital One app, or a lot of the credit cards. When you log in, they'll give you a credit score. That's a helpful gauge of, is there something that I need to check on my score because it dropped significantly? But if you go to apply for a mortgage or to buy a car or something that where the company is going to pull your score, it's going to be a different score than it's going to show up on those things. And that's one of the frustrations of my banker friends is like, gosh, people need to stop looking at like creditsesame.com because that is not the score that we're going to give them when they apply for a mortgage.
Right. And it's different everywhere you look.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, my credit score on the whatever credit wise is definitely lower than what it really is because of the way that they weigh the different things. And they're only pulling the information that's on, I think, my Equifax report, which is only one of the three. And so that's the other thing to know is like, it's actually kind of a proprietary, arbitrary thing. And your credit score is not the most important thing. It is actually not, it's only one piece of your health picture. It's like your BMI, like that. Is that really an accurate measurement of your weight? Like what if you're somebody who's really muscular? Your BMI is going to make you look way off the charts and put you into some categories that do not apply to your health. So your credit score, I have clients who have tons of debt, but they pay their payments on time every month. So they have good credit scores. And then I have clients who have terrible credit scores because they don't have any. They've avoided debt. And so it's not really an accurate thing. It's more a distraction, I think, to people, unless you're really getting ready to like buy a house, apply for a new lease, trying to get the best insurance rates. Some jobs require you to have a clean credit report. You want to check before that, but otherwise don't focus on that too much.
Yeah, exactly. So you often talk about money stories, right? So those are what beliefs we inherit from our families?
Yes, money stories. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So how can we identify and rewrite the stories if that no longer serves us?
Well, the first thing is figuring out what stories you're telling yourself. I have a quote right in front of me that says, "We are the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves." Like that's who we are. What stories am I telling myself about myself? And are they necessarily true? Maybe they were true at the time the story was written. And so most of our money stories or money scripts were developed based on childhood experiences. And a lot of times those scripts are what get us through to adulting. But then our situations might change. And knowing that you have a script is one thing. Deciding whether or not it's one you want to continue is another thing. And then if you decide, no, that's not a script I want to keep carrying, changing it, that's a whole other effort. But for example, a money script that I see a lot is like, you always have to be saving money. And this is a big thing in my colleagues who work with folks who are getting ready to retire. You always need to be saving money because most people who get to a level of comfortable wealth and are able to retire at kind of the regular, these days, late 60s retirement age, got there through a certain element of thrift. They've been, made trade-offs with their money and they've always prioritized saving. And when you retire, you have to start spending your savings. And up until that day, for a lot of people, dipping into your savings was a sign of something gone wrong. I had to dip into my savings because I forgot to plan for my dog's annual vet visit, or I had to dip into my savings because I lost my job, or I had to dip into my savings because I forgot to plan adequately for my child's wedding or something. And then in retirement, you're literally all of your income is now coming from your savings for the most part. Yeah. And that's a huge psychological shift. And I see so many people living a lesser lifestyle than they really want to live because they just don't feel comfortable spending their money. And some people don't even have heirs that are going to enjoy that money. So it's like, what are you waiting for? And that's something that we have sessions on every financial planning conference I go to. It's like, how do we help our clients enjoy their money in retirement?
Yes. Yeah. Without worrying. So when you're saying you're saving all the time, if they're retired, how are they saving?
Well, that's the thing is they have to recognize that it's no longer a true script. You don't have to be saving. This is why you saved. I mean, there's one hack, like my mom is one of those people that carries that story. And when she first retired, she was like, I'm just not comfortable not putting money in savings. And so she was still taking $200 a month and putting it into her savings account, even though she was then also like spending that eventually on things like travel or treats or facials or, things that she wanted to treat herself to. And it was all kind of just shifting it from one savings bucket to the other. That behavior made it, she was able to relax about money. So sometimes just hacking yourself is okay. And that's one of the examples of when the technically correct answer is, spend it or or, find a way to enjoy it. But maybe that's not going to work for you.
Yeah. Save it to spend it. So, okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about financial shame, right? So how does it manifest and what's your approach to helping people move through it?
That's a good one. I think it's important to define the difference between guilt and shame, because a lot of us need to stop ourselves and stay in guilt. So guilt is when we act outside of our values, but it is something that we can correct. So, yelling at your spouse in the morning when you're grumpy and haven't had your coffee yet, and that's acting outside of your value of being a caring and kind spouse. And so there's a remedy for that. I am sorry. I shouldn't talk to you before I have my coffee, but, taking responsibility for the action and taking corrective action. Shame is when we internalize that behavior and we think it says something about who we are. So shame would be, I'm a terrible person. I'm an unloving spouse because I yelled at my husband this morning because he got in the way when I was getting to the coffee machine. And so if you can stop yourself at that, like, whoa, that was bad behavior and I can fix that and not take it down that road, that's where we need to get when it comes to money, because a lot of us have internalized messages about money that don't necessarily have to be true. For example, I have debt, therefore I'm a bad person, or I must not care about money, or I don't care about my future, or I'm a terrible mother, or there's so many scripts that spiral out of that. And so recognizing that, like, who says that having debt makes you a bad person? The Bible, maybe, but like the Bible needs to be taken in context. Everything needs to be taken in context. Like, so why do you have debt? Let's examine that. So that's one of the ways I help people get out of that shame spiral. Like, let's talk about what that debt is from. In some cases, it is because there are behaviors that were out of line with your values. I just was having a bad day and I ignored my inner voice that said, you don't have the money to spend. And I went to Lululemon and I went nuts. Okay, well, what's the corrective behavior there? That doesn't have to mean you're a terrible person. But more often than not, what starts a debt snowball the wrong way and getting people into debt is some type of life event that they couldn't have foreseen. A job loss, a divorce, an illness, a sick kid, a sick pet, a house project, and feeling overwhelmed and not having the skills to deal with it. And so let's remember that the reason that you have good credit and we're able to have debt is like, that's what it's for. And so there's nothing bad about you because you weren't financially prepared for this thing that you didn't know was going to happen. Are there things you could have gone back in the past and done differently to maybe have the money on hand to cover this? Possibly, but not always.
Yeah.
So talking through like, where did this come from? How can we prevent it from happening again? And I always remind people, Rick Kelley, who's a well-known person in the financial therapy world, he's one of the pioneers of that world. He says money is a 21st century life skill. Walking, eating, driving are all life skills as well that have been around for at least since the 20th century, if not since the dawn of mankind. But we don't have a mechanism to teach money like we do driving or eating or walking or language. And so the fact that you don't possess that life skill says nothing about you as a person. And it just says something about the system that you were raised in. And so now is the time to gain that skill.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't talk about it at the dinner table. A lot of people, even friends, don't like to talk about money. It's like, why? Why don't people like to talk about money? It's so important that we talk about it.
Yes. And it's because we internalize what it says about us. We tie ourselves to our income or our stuff or And that's part of the reason that it's hard to find a mechanism to teach money. You know, that a lot of people automatically, well, we should teach this in schools. And there are many states in the United States that do require some form of financial education for a high school degree. But what do you teach?
Yeah.
Everybody comes from a different place. Yeah, we can teach how credit cards work. That's an important thing. But there's always the jokes about like, oh, I'm so glad I learned about parallelograms instead of taxes because it really comes in handy this parallelogram season. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I took a tax class back in 1999, and it's completely irrelevant at this point.
Yeah. 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 It'd be great if they taught like, how do you do a budget? How do you build credit? How do you keep your credit good? You know, how do you pull a credit report? How do you watch what you're doing? How do you buy a mortgage? How do you buy a home? Do you always have to get a mortgage? You know, all that. That's important to know.
Yeah. Yes. And though there are ways to learn that and to teach that in schools, but then the same thing is like, why do we need to buy a home? Because I challenge the idea that owning a home is the end all be all of financial success because it's not right for everybody. And it's not a great way to invest your money.
Yeah. Because not all real estate turns around for you. So
no, that's luck.
Yes. Well, this episode of the Larson Health Podcast is supported by our community at LarsonHealthWeightLoss.com, where wellness goes beyond the plate. Stick around as we dive deeper into financial clarity with Kelley C. Long.
Single session.
Like it was almost instant. Like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. You know, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well, be aware, be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
This is the Larson Health Podcast, and we're here today with the amazing Kelley C. Long. So, Kelley, let's dive into the second key thing everyone should know about their finances, financial confidence, and what does that really look like?
You know, one of the things that everybody should know, which is going to sound really like duh, a surprising number of people don't know this, is what their basic bills are every month. And that's important for two reasons. We talked earlier in the show about my clients tend to come with two different opposite situations. One of them is people who are struggling financially and looking to find some wiggle room in their balance. And then there's people who have an abundance of cash on hand and they feel like they should be doing something more, but they're afraid. And both of those people need to have an answer of how much should we have in our emergency fund. That's a common phrase we hear in financial coaching. And an emergency fund is really just cash that you have set aside to get you through an unexpected disruptive life event. So an emergency fund is not, I forgot to plan for my best friend's daughter's wedding that I need to go to. That is an emergency in your social life, but it's not necessarily an emergency in your financial life. It's for unexpected loss of income, job loss, illness, your house burns down, like true, like, holy crap, could change my life. The purpose of the emergency fund is to get you through those disruptive events so that when you have gotten through it and you're back to building back up your life, you're not also having to build up your finances. So you don't have an emergency fund and you lose your job, you end up with excessive debt. You might end up having to go through bankruptcy. It can be years once you get back to work before you feel whole again. And so it's really there to kind of help you minimize the long-term damage to your financial profile. Knowing how much to have there for the folks who are living paycheck to paycheck is helpful in terms of goal setting. As you probably know in your work, having a goal makes it a lot more likely that you'll be motivated to work towards it. And then on the other side, if you have too much in savings, or you think you have too much in savings, knowing how much that you should have can help you to release some of that other money and invest it in other places, whether that's the market or experiences or lifestyle or buying a home, things like that. And your basic bills, well, let me take a step back. A lot of times you'll hear the emergency fund should be 3 to 6 months of your income. And that is a lot of money for most people. And most of us, even those of us who spend all of our income every month, could live on less than 3 to 6 months of our income. So I like to say, let's go for 3 to 6 months of your basic bills. Like, what's your crisis budget? If you had to just buckle down and spend on the basics. So it's the obvious stuff like your housing cost, insurance, cell phone, car payment or insurance, electric, that stuff, a little bit for food, a little bit for day-to-day life stuff, gas for your car, things like that. But it's not dining out, it's not clothes, it's not travel, it's not entertainment. And that's where that's our lifestyle expenses. So for the folks who are living paycheck to paycheck, helping them identify that crisis budget can make that 3 to 6 months feel a lot more approachable because it's a lot lower than 3 to 6 months of their income. And then the folks over here who have too much in cash, it can be a real eye opener to say, you really probably only need $15,000 in the bank to get you through a 6-month like income disruption. And they're like, that's not enough at all. Great. Then what feels good to you? Which is probably not $300,000 that you have in cash or something. And helping, like having that level can be really informative. So just the first question I always ask clients is like, what are your basic bills? And it's surprising to me the number of people who don't know. And that's an exercise and it can be emotional.
Can it be? Yeah.
Because it's easy to list out all of our bills, which is most of us, the purpose of budgeting and directing your spending isn't to do the budgeting. It's to get yourself to a point where you don't have to budget anymore, in my opinion, so that you just naturally have enough money coming in to cover your lifestyle expenses. You're working towards your other goals and you're not accruing debt. And so we get out of the habit of knowing what our basic life expenses are because we don't have to know. And the only reason I think you need to know is if you want to make a change to your finances or your lifestyle. And so somebody getting ready to retire, I'm going to ask them that question so I can help them decide if they're financially ready to retire, help them make an income plan. How much do you need to be withdrawing from savings every month? Where is that money going to come from? And so that's just like a basic foundational question that any financial planner is going to ask someone. And most people just ballpark it. I don't know, probably, I'd say $4,000 or $5,000 a month. And then we look at it, it's like, no, you're spending like $12,000 a month.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, when you really dig in, and everybody should dig in and really look at how much are you actually spending every month? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's a necessary exercise because it can lead to some shame unnecessarily in cases of like, there are a lot of people like, I don't really want to look because I don't want to know what I'm spending on DoorDash every month.
Oh.
And what's funny is, again, 50-50. Some people are the experiences. Yeah, that was painful. That was shameful. And then my work is helping them overcome the shame. Like, this doesn't say anything about you. You're doing something about it. Let's give ourselves kudos. Why are you door dashing? You're busy. You're prioritizing other things. Like, we talk through to kind of give ourselves some grace and forgiveness and self-compassion. But then a lot of people are like, I don't spend that much money. Like here I was worried that I was just this crazy spender and I'm not. I need to spend more money. I had one client go out and buy herself a Cartier watch. Like, she's like, I have been putting this off for so long because I thought I was bad with money. And it turns out I've been way more restrictive than I need to be. And I deserve this watch. And I was like,
yes. Yeah. I can remember when I was working with you and I was debating, like, do I go out and buy that nice car? I'm in sales. Do I buy that nice car? Do I not? And you were like, I think you can do it.
You were excessively frugal back in those days without even trying to be.
Yeah, I was my mother had always instilled in us, save your money, save your money, save your money, and we didn't grow up with a lot of money. So, we had to be separated as kids because my mom couldn't take care of us. And when you learn that, you're like, I do not want to be poor. So you save your money and save your money.
So there's your script.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of financial noise. They're promising like quick fixes. So how do you guide clients toward a realistic and lasting financial well-being?
It's a great question, because there is a lot of noise, and some of it is relevant to every bit of it is relevant to somebody, but it's not all of it's not relevant to everybody. And so having that filter can be challenging. Generally speaking, the day-to-day noise about our economy, the stock market, interest rates, all of that is semi-irrelevant to most of us, unless you are like in a job industry that's super fragile and on the cusp of maybe being irrelevant, or had some overhiring, like you're at risk of losing your job, or if you have a lot of credit card debt on a variable rate credit card and interest rates are going up, like then that's important to pay attention to. The day-to-day movements of the stock market literally like do not matter to,
Yes.
if you are investing, you should be in it for at least 10 years, because otherwise, when we think of investing, we think of risk of the loss of your money. That's what most people think of the risk in investing. But there's lots of risks in investing. There's interest rate risk, meaning that you're going to have money in savings that isn't earning high enough interest rate to outpace what you could earn investing, or you're invested in bonds and the interest rates are too low or too high, and things are going to change when interest rates change. There's inflation risk, that inflation will grow faster than your money. But most of us think of, when we talk about risk, we're talking about market risk, which is the risk that your money will go down in value. And when you buy individual stocks, like if you go out and buy 100 shares of Apple, that's going to cost you roughly $20,000 right now. And if tomorrow Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, dies and Apple goes out of business, you could lose your $20,000.
Yes.
But you can also buy a index fund, a mutual fund that invests in all of the technology companies. And so if Apple goes out of business, that might impact the price of that mutual fund, but all the other technology companies that are in that fund are still around. And so most of us who are not being individual stock buyers or day traders are not at risk of losing all of our money. We're at risk of the things that we buy, the shares that we buy, going down in value temporarily in the short term, the risk of short-term loss. And so when I'm coaching clients who are getting ready to start investing for the first time, they're like, okay, I'm ready to start saving. I'm ready to open that Roth IRA. And, I'm not an investment advisor, so they pick where they're going to open the account. They pick what they're going to invest in. I just show them the functional buttons to push and explain to them what they're doing. I am always like, don't log in for a long time. Don't look at this, especially if you hear that the market's down. Don't look, because what you're going to want to pull out. You're going to freak out. But just like when you buy a house, the real estate market is constantly changing.
Yes.
I do get a report every month from my mortgage company with an estimated home value. I don't open it because I don't want to know. I'm not going to sell my house tomorrow if it's it's at peak cost right now. I'm not getting ready to move anytime soon. So I don't really care what my house is worth right now. And I feel the same way about my investments, because I have no plans to sell them. And that's not what they're there for. And when you do know you're getting ready to need the money that you have invested, that's when you need to start moving the money out of the market. But it can't be emotional. You have to just do it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I'm not even like I retired at 54, but I haven't sold anything yet.
Yeah.
Nor have I shifted anything yet.
You're what we call financial independence, retire early, coast FI. That's the term, which means that you're financially independent. So you're no longer having to save for the future, but you are coasting on your investments. I'm the same place. I don't really need to add to my investments, but I'm not spending them yet. So I'm coasting.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And we're making some money on the side, right? So we're still doing something to make some money, but
make enough money to pay my lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. So knowing you're enough, how important is that in finding financial peace?
I think that is the holy grail of financial peace. And not only knowing you're enough intellectually, but believing it and embodying it, because I can tell you that you have more than enough saved for retirement and you don't need to add to it anymore. And I can tell you that you have plenty of money in savings to get you through not only a job loss, but like you can quit your job and not earn for 6 months and still hire a housekeeper. But until you believe it and are able to do that without stress, then it doesn't matter. So
yeah.
That's
I still stress about
the
money.
magic. Yeah, of course. I mean, some of it's your personality, right?
Right. Yeah,
Like
because
it
mother,
could be
save money.
Yeah. So in that case, just going to your money script of I always need to be saving, and you're hearing your mom's voice. And that was a very true money script for a long, long time. And it especially was true for her. And obviously times were different when she had to make the tough decisions she had to make about her childcare. And you don't have kids. So you're not in that at risk of having to send one kid off to live with your sister because you don't have a kid.
Right. Exactly.
Also, your situation is different, but I can tell you intellectually, Kim, you are more than fine. When we met, you were going to move to California and open a dog walking business at 50. You remember that? I always remembered that. I was like, that's a cool dream. That's a very doable dream. And I remember saying like, well, you need to figure out like what people charge for dog walking in San Diego.
Yeah.
What's the cost of housing? Like that was the information that you needed. But, if you had done that research and we found that you actually had enough money to do that, you still have to believe it, right?
Right.
And eventually you did believe it because you retired from your high-powered, high-stress sales job and started your company and have lived a more snowbird lifestyle. Like you've actually made a lot of shifts that had you having to believe some things about money that maybe you didn't feel.
Yeah.
But it's a process.
So this segment is brought to you by LarsonHealthWeightLoss.com and our sponsors, featuring our 4-week wellness reset to reduce inflammation and restore balance using food as medicine. Check it out.
Author, radio show host, strategies to help gain perspective. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. To John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBN Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Again, welcome back. We still have Kelley here with us. So Kelley, let's explore the final core thing everyone should know about finances, like how it directly affects their physical and emotional health, and what patterns have you seen?
The thing that I think everybody needs to know, and one of the questions I'm often asked in educating clients around is like, what are my savings options for the future? Like what's the best way to put my money away for retirement or financial independence or 20 years from now? Because there are lots of options. One of them, the simplest, most straightforward way, is a brokerage account, just investing in the stock market in a regular old brokerage account, meaning that there's no tax benefits. You pay taxes on the money you make as you make it, but you can withdraw the money at any time. But most people are starting with some type of retirement account. The difference between a retirement account and a regular brokerage account is really more just the tax laws. So when those laws were created to incentivize people to save for the future, the trade-off was, hey, we'll give you a tax break on this money as long as you're willing to kiss it goodbye for a little longer.
Yeah.
So, when we put money into an IRA, for example, you are basically agreeing that you will not withdraw that money before you're 59 and a half or older. And if you happen to have to withdraw that money before you're 59 and a half, then not only are there tax consequences, but there are penalties. And there are certain exceptions to that rule. Like if you pass away or there's some type of disability or a hardship, but generally speaking, you can't just take it out and go buy a new car because you forgot, to save outside of your retirement account. And so that's one of the reasons that we have that whole 5-year rule around a rule of thumb around investing. Like if you are going to need the money in 5 years or less, it's not worth investing it in anything besides cash because you just don't want to deal with the short-term fluctuations. But also investing generally, most of us start in some type of retirement account. So there's some Ks and 403Bs, which you typically have an employer, or if you're a soloist like us, we could open a solo 401k, and there are pros and cons to that. IRAs are available to anybody with earned income. There's a regular IRA where you deduct the money when you put it in there, and then when you take the money out in retirement, it's taxed to you then. Then there's the Roth IRA, which is the opposite. You don't get any type of tax benefit putting it in this year, but when you withdraw it in retirement, there's no taxes on the growth. There are income limits to being able to contribute to a Roth IRA. And then for solo self-employed folks like us, there's also the SEP IRA. That stands for something different, but I always think of it as self-employed persons, SEP. And then my favorite thing to talk about is HSAs, health savings accounts, which a lot of people are not optimizing because they're putting money in there and spending it on their healthcare. That's what they're for, right? But if you can let that money build up, your health savings account can actually be available to help you fund your health expenses in retirement, which is kind of the biggest mystery number when we're helping people decide what their retirement costs are going to be, is if you could have a separate pot of money that's just for that. When you take money out of an HSA and spend it on health expenses, it's tax-free.
Yeah.
And so having a pot of money for that, like for me, my HSA is actually my long-term care fund. So I'm not going to buy long-term care insurance. I don't want to deal with, there's a variety of personal reasons, but generally speaking, if I need nursing home care, I have my HSA to pay for that.
Exactly. Yeah. And so my husband has his health savings account, and I have a health savings account from when I was working. So I don't touch it. I just leave it and let it grow. And we use his account.
Yours is invested, right?
It's invested. Yeah. Now they don't let me invest all of it.
Well, then you need to move it to a different provider.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know, HSAs are more like IRAs in that you can move it to a different companies. If you just search online, best HSA providers, you'll find, I like the companies that don't charge you any type of annual fee. They allow you to invest whatever you want up to the whole amount. But some providers, especially those that are tied to insurance companies, will charge you a monthly fee for investments. They have a limited amount of investment options, or they'll make you keep a certain amount in cash. I mean, I keep a little bit of my HSA in cash. It's invested a little more conservatively than my other retirement funds, because if I do have some type of large health event, I might tap that money.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about my HSA. I know we're almost done, but I think this is an important thing to point out. You can reimburse yourself for past medical expenses at any time from your HSA. I've had my HSA since 2016, and I have been tracking every eligible expense. I'm talking readers, menstrual products, bandages, cold medicine, vitamins, anything that is eligible, I'm putting that on my spreadsheet. And I have spent over $80,000 eligible expenses since 2016. So that's not just doctor's visits.
Right.
And I've put $31,000 into my HSA over those years. But my HSA is worth $55,000 right now. So if I had spent that money as the expenses came up, I would have gotten $31,000 worth of value out of it. At this point, I can withdraw all $55,000 of my HSA tax-free and say I'm just reimbursing myself for my expenses. And I can do whatever I want with that money.
Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing clarity and compassion to a topic that touches every part of our lives. This is a conversation, was a reminder that financial health is not about how much we earn. It's about how aligned, informed, and empowered we feel with what we have. To our listeners, if you're ready to nourish both your physical and financial health, visit us at larsonhealthweightloss.com or see Kelley at Financial Bliss. And if today's conversation sparks something in you, reach out to Kelley and begin your journey to financial peace. Find Kelley's links in the show notes. And until next time, remember, true wellness includes financial health, and it all starts with awareness, courage, and the next right step.